think about my parents, my dad has a fourth grade education. My mom barely graduated high school. I think more about my brother dropping out of high school because we needed more money or more income during '08 and the bravery it took for him. But also I think about my sister and how she dropped out of community college, not because she didn't have the aptitude or the capability, but because she was pushed out. And so by the time I came around, the youngest of three, and got introduced to IYT, it was the first time for my family, generationally, where we found an advocate to advocate for us in the public education system.
Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Here, our purpose and passion are simple: to highlight the incredible nonprofits that make our communities stronger. Each episode is a chance for these organizations to tell their story in their words, sharing not just what they do, but why it matters to the people they serve, to their supporters, and to all of us who believe in the power of community. Through podcasting, we hope to amplify their voices, inspire connection, and give them one more tool to reach the hearts of donors, partners, and neighbors alike. This work is made possible through the generous support of our founding partners, CapTrust, offering fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations serving Sacramento, Roseville, and Folsom, and online at captrust.com. And Western Health Advantage, a local not-for-profit health plan that believes healthcare is more than coverage. It's about caring. From supporting the American Heart Association to making arts and wellness accessible for all, Western Health Advantage truly delivers healthcare with heart. Learn more at westernhealth.com. This episode, I'm focused on the incredible work of two young men who prove that education is the fastest path to breaking the cycle of generational poverty. Their organization begins with students as early as 6th grade and stays with them through college graduation, providing mentorship, leadership training, academic support, and parental engagement. With more than 11,000 young men served across 6 states and 8 regions, they've built a powerful brotherhood and pipeline of opportunity. Breaking barriers and building futures for young men of color, they're showing that with the right support, every student can transform not just their tomorrow, but the future of their families and communities. Despite funding challenges, they remain steadfast in their mission, achieving remarkable graduation and college attendance rates. The organization is Improve Your Tomorrow, more affectionately known as IYT. And I'm speaking with co-founder Michael Lynch and program alumnus Alejandro Galicia Cervantes, who overcame adversity to achieve both academic and entrepreneurial success. Michael Lynch, Alejandro Galicia Cervantes, welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network.
Excited to be here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation, guys. Michael, I want to start before the organization, because your story is one that's so familiar to many young men of color and men that you work with. It shows familiarity and authenticity, and you've been where they've been. Tell us that story, if you would.
Yeah. I mean, Jeff, I grew up in communities where there were tremendous talent, just very little opportunity like for us to thrive. Single parent home, raised by a phenomenal father, but single parent homes bring a lot of different challenges with that. So, but for me, my story really began to take shape, when I went to Valley High School in South Sac, a place where it was an opportunity for me to be able to thrive. But for so many folks, like, it wasn't. Football was my catalyst. That was the thing I was going to be able to do to get to the next level. That's how I saw a better life. That's how I saw college. But for a lot of my peers who maybe didn't have the same support system, I had a phenomenal father. My mom was gone. I had a phenomenal father, right, who was there, who was consistent. And that was my cornerstone. And football propelled me to be able to go to the next level. But, where it kind of all started was really college. Freshman, sophomore year in college, I was playing football at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and I got a call where one of my friends was shot and killed back home, right on Stockton Boulevard. And that was one of those moments where I knew I wanted to come back and change my community, because unfortunately, so many of my friends and peers didn't get an opportunity to live a full life.
What a blessing to have that purpose that early on, too. Did you continue with football for all 4 years of school?
I did, as long as I could.
Okay. I'm looking at you. It looks like you're still playing some ball.
I was at UNLV for my first 2 years of college, and then I transferred to Humboldt State. They gave me a scholarship to continue to play in. I got to my senior year at the end, where the NFL wasn't knocking on the door, so I was like, what other opportunities are out there for me to create like some impact?
Alejandro, how about your story? Tell us a little bit about yours as well.
Yeah, of course. So I'm originally from LA, if that helps. I come from an immigrant background. I have a family that's mixed status. And so we just work as street vendors. They're leteros, they're selling ice cream. I grew up, waking up at 6 a.m., setting up my little ice cream cart. I had, a car that was like 3 times my size. I was pushing it up and down parks right after school. So I would wake up at 6 a.m., get my cart ready. My parents would drop me off to school, and then they would pick me up and drop me off at a park. And then, I would go around, walk around with my little car, sell. And I did that ever since I was like 12 or 11. Ever since I was old enough and strong enough to push a cart, I've been doing that. And it's the same story for my entire family. So we're very much hardworking, resilient family. But one thing I never really took the time to understand was just my upbringing, right? So we lived in the Valley in LA County. I lived in the red light district. And so I didn't know that not everybody lived 5 minutes away from a strip club. I didn't know that a lot of people, when they were walking back from their middle school or elementary, that they didn't walk past sex workers. I didn't know that if you live right next to a liquor store, there's a lot of people that are using or actively partaking in drugs. And so this is just my everyday walk from my house to my elementary up until my middle school. And then we moved to South Sacramento around 2008 when the financial crisis was happening. We just weren't selling anything. Our home, we were renters, but they pushed us out because they had to sell their property. The whole street was remodeled and redeveloped. And so we were looking around on a house for like a couple months. And then there was just a ray of opportunity to go to South Sacramento when there was not a lot of street vendors around. And that was the first time in my family where we were financially secure. And just going from like working 6 a.m. to like 9 p.m. every single day since I was 12 to now only working over the summers really completely changed my outlook on education. And so when I think about my parents, my dad has a 4th grade education. My mom barely graduated high school. I think more about my brother dropping out of high school because we needed more money or more income during 2008 and the bravery it took for him. But also I think about my sister and how she dropped out of community college, not because she didn't have the aptitude or the capability, but because she was pushed out. There was no cultural attention to her and the way that she interacted with the community college campus. At the time, there was no IYT for her. And so by the time I came around, the youngest of 3, and got introduced to IYT, it was the first time for my family, generationally, where we found an advocate to advocate for us in the public education system. And so I was very much that kid that was in and out of classes, not really doing homework, not really like staying engaged in the curriculum. Because for me, school was just a means to graduating high school. It really wasn't a means to getting a career. Mm-hmm. And so when I got introduced to Michael, a lot of my friends started to join IYT. An easy way that they bring kids in is through either a PlayStation, Xbox, or like pizza. So that's how they got my 2 best friends into the program. And then my 2 best friends invited me in. They said like, oh, you should apply. It's a really cool program. And then it wasn't until like I met Michael at a library. Again, Michael's really big, right? So I'm like half his size looking up like, oh, hey, how's it going? And there he just asked me a question, getting to know me, whether it was a good fit for me to be in the program. And then he asked me like, oh, what do you want to do with your life? And at least for myself, that was the first time somebody asked me that. Mm-hmm. And I started thinking, and I said an answer that I'm too embarrassed to say right now, but that really got me thinking. And then a few months later, we went to Stanford. That was my first introduction with like university. I completely fell in love with it. I was like, that's where I want to go. And I went from being what was it, like a 2.1, 2.3 student?
Out there.
The very next semester to a 4.1.
That's
and
awesome.
then never looked back.
And we're actually he's a little bit ahead of us, because I'm going to have you introduce the program. And it's become an acronym. Everybody calls it IYT, but it really stands for Improve Your Tomorrow.
Right.
So tell us about the genesis of where that came from, knowing that the quickest way to break the generational poverty gap is really through education. And you clearly picked up on that in your couple of years, realizing that the NFL wasn't knocking on your door. I got to do something else here, right? So that education was appropriate to bring it back to Sacramento. Tell us about that. What was the genesis?
Yeah, for me, I actually started with sports again. I graduated college, and I got an internship to work like in the state capitol for some member Wilma Carter. It was called the SAC Semester Internship Program. I'm actually back home at this point. This is 2011. I'm sitting on the couch watching Sports Center, and I'm seeing this. I don't know if you all remember the phenomenal corner for the Raiders. I'm hoping one day he hears the story so he can be like, he can give us a call. But corner named Nandi Asamoah. He was an all-pro corner, like, from the Raiders, and I'm watching him on ESPN, like, and he's, like, taking this group of kids on a college tour from Oakland, like, to Washington, D.C. And I thought at that moment, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be able to go back to my old high school, like my old neighborhood, and be able to take other young people, like, to college, like, to an exposure. Because in, like, high school, for me, the only exposure I had to college was through football camps. I got a chance, I was being recruited, so I got a chance to go participate in camps, and we got the chance to stay overnight in schools, like, for football camps. It wasn't, like, in an academic setting. It wasn't me as a student. It was me as an athlete. So, like the light bulb moment was watching Nandi Asamoah take those group of kids on a college tour from Oakland to D.C. Then, I called my best friend, Michael Casper. I said, man, we should start a program. Like at Valley High School, we're both from, and say help to get kids right to college. And it wasn't 2 years later until we actually met with our high school counselor, or Mr. Ortiz. We said, hey, listen, we want to create this program. No idea what we're doing, because it didn't start as this grand vision of what it is today, but it's the simplicity of how can we go back to where we're from to be able to help get other folks at the time just to college, not the through college, right? That IYT is. But the mission for us is really simple. It's to increase the number of young men of color to attend and graduate from college universities. Because, Jeff, you said it. The best path to economic mobility, right? The best path to create economic value, the best path to be able to uplift a group of people, like, through education. So the Improve Your Tomorrow is if you get an AA degree, if you get a bachelor's degree, and your family otherwise doesn't have it, you are improving your tomorrow.
That's right. You've made a significant leap.
Exactly.
And you'll probably continue to pay that forward every step you can.
It's generational at that point.
Yes.
So, I think about my work now. Listen, it's 400 years of racial inequity. We're not going to solve that over the course of 15 years. But I see my work now as generational. Like, I know that Alejandro's kids will be in a better place right than he did, largely because of his ability to take advantage of something, right, to complete his education at UC Davis. And then not only his kids will be impacted, right, but their grandkids. So from a decision that Alejandro made as a 15 to 16-year-old, right, to join something he knew nothing of, but to take part in not a collegiate education, his economic life will be changed. And you can argue that all the other health externalities regarding what education provides, right, to a community.
Tell me a little bit about these pipelines, because you use a couple of phrases, school to prison pipeline or college to community pipeline. Give us a little bit about those, because obviously they're diametrically opposed, and we prefer the latter versus the former.
Yeah, the school to prison pipeline is a really simple one. I mean, if you're arrested one time, like on campus, if you're arrested as a young person, then your likelihood to be involved in the criminal justice system drastically increases. Drastically. Just one time, arrested one time. Because it's exposure to a network. If you're arrested and you're now in the incarceration system, even like for 2 nights in the juvenile hall, your network begins to change. Your opportunities begin to change. Your perception, like your friend's perception of who you are, the school's perception of who you are, because now you are a kid that's been formerly incarcerated. So there's so many labels that come on. Therefore, you're just much more likely now, right, to be able to happen. And those arrests on campus, those incarceration points are concentrated within communities of color, in particular concentrated within communities of poverty. So, like, that's the school to prison pipeline that so many young people are on. Like, for us, the college and community pipeline is, listen, we know what happens on the other side. Like, what if we brought young men who were from that same community back in the same school that they were from to be able to help to be able to serve?
Mm-hmm.
Right, to serve as what we call college access mentors. And not only our young men, but young folks who are from that community to come back and serve. So we're taking, right, this next generation of leaders that's still being trained, right, to come back. And then, what that provides is hope, provides joy. It provides all those things that you need to be able to see.
And not to mention the confidence
Exactly.
that I can do this. You're amongst peers.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't get any better to see all of you progressing, all of the people, whatever that class is, whatever that group is, whatever that neighborhood is,
Exactly.
on how you're able to change so many in just the advent of the education of one.
Take an example of what happened today.
Absolutely.
I think it's so phenomenal.
Please.
We talk about this college to community pipeline. So today I'm at the office and I see one of the young men I haven't seen in a while. He's a senior in college now at Sac State. His name is Moses. And, I'm talking. I'm like, Moses, man, how are you doing? What you been doing? He started in 10th grade, like at Valley High School, and now he's a senior at Sac State. He's been working for IYT for his entire time in college. I'm talking to Moses. I'm like, what do you want to do afterward? He's like, I'm in ROTC, and I want to be an Army officer after graduation. I was like, Moses, let me walk you down the hall real quick. I walked him down the hall to meet Rogel. Rogel had been at IYT since 9th grade. He went to Sonoma State, was an ROTC. He works for IYT as a program manager, but he's an officer, in the Army. So I connected them too. I said, Moses, you need to meet Rogel. This is exactly what you're doing. Your paths are very similar. And, to walk away and hear the excitement in Moses' voice, he's talking to someone who went to the same neighborhood, very similar challenges, was in a part of the same program. And now he was able to connect his life path to someone else who's walked that. It's powerful.
And that's perfect, because that alignment, now that guidance, now that mentorship, beyond your educational process of mentorship, becomes career mentorship.
Exactly.
By the same space that he wants to get into, which is so amazing that it just coincidental, that just happened to happen. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Your program is really disciplined. Tell us a little bit about the process, the pillars, the numbers. We'll talk a little bit about the numbers of markets you're in and the men that you've had go through the program and how that all works. But I think a lot of people hear about it and they're like, huh? Wait, these guys are sticking with you for how long?
Yeah.
So walk us through that, because that's an amazing process, the way that this thing works.
Yeah, the discipline part was intentional. We want, and not only do we focus on young men and young men of color, it's really broad and diverse, but it's young people who have below a 2.0 GPA, folks who have behavior attendance issues, and folks who are not showing up to school as often as they should. So it's a sub-market of young people who need a little more support and love. Not that they're not capable, they're not have all the tools to be successful. They just need a little more support at the time to be able to get to where they want. But for us and how we sort of do it, it's up to 12 years. Young men can start as early as 6th grade, all the way through college completion. That's a big part of it. So through middle school, through high school, whether you go to a local college or a faraway college, you stay within the IYT Brotherhood. And that was really intentional. And there's a handful of support services around that. So one is to meet with a mentor twice per month. They're required to attend a study hall after school. They're required to attend workshops after school. They get to go on these phenomenal college experiences, some that are overnight, some that are during the day. They get to participate in internships, and their parents get engaged. And that's really critical to make sure that the mom and dad and grandmother, whoever is the family at the home, that they know what's going on in school and they know what this young person needs to do to be successful.
So I'm going to look over you, Alejandro. When did you come in?
I came in 9th grade. So I did my freshman year. I was around 297 something out of 300 in terms of my class ranking. And then I went on and joined my 9th grade, and I stuck around all the way through the end of college. I ended up graduating from my high school in Valley High, went on to go to UC Davis, graduated from UC Davis, and then I'm still coming back around. It's, the program model ends at the end of your college career, but it continues on with the networking, with the connections, with the opportunities. And I think that's a main point that I want to hammer on. There's a lot of kids like myself that grew up with, a predetermined path. We just weren't exposed to other opportunities. So we were never given the chance to, realize our full potential. And so when there's like chance encounters at the IYT headquarters where like a lot of the brothers have similar paths, that only happens because they created a space where those relationships and those opportunities could happen at any moment.
Tell me, now that you've graduated UC Davis, and you look back on the experience of IYT, what do you think was the greatest benefit, the greatest part of IYT that allowed you to get all the way through the process?
It was a label. I was very much the angry kid. I was like, had a lot of resentment from, my upbringing. I mean, I didn't really have like parental advocates that knew how to navigate the public education system. So it's not so much that they didn't care about me. It's just that they didn't have the tools or awareness or knowledge to know how to best advocate for myself. And so when I go over and I meet with my mentor, that when I was a freshman in high school, he was my senior. It was like he played football, he played baseball. And so there was already a connection of trust and confidence. So then I have one of the people that I used to look up to be my mentor and bring me up in terms of my confidence. And then when teachers like introduce you or like they call you to the side, they know, oh, like that's an IYT student. Or like, oh, like, let's talk to your mentor before things escalate towards whether it's remedial or punitive like punishments. There's just an inherent difference in the way people treat you. And I think for me, I was very much the kid that was like a 2.0 student, where like a lot of teachers didn't really give me a second look. And the moment I started to apply myself, because I was introduced to this entirely new perspective of where I could be, then folks around me started to put me in this box that really just motivated me to be more in my studies, because there's a constant reinforcement, whether it's the mentorships, the one-on-ones with your mentors, whether it's like the Saturday study halls, whether it's like the college tours. There's just constant reinforcement that you do belong here, and like you don't have to change or code switch or like be somebody that you're not, just to make yourself fit in these higher education places that typically, at least you never seen, at least for myself, I never saw any of my family go through those spaces.
That's what gives me, Jeff, is he already had it in him. There's nothing like we didn't teach him. Like, just needed someone to turn the key, right? To put a little fire behind it or some exposure to be able to truly become like the person he is today.
As so many of our youth do and have, they don't have the opportunity. You're providing it. I'm looking. You came in a little tired. Since we started talking, I know it's not the coffee. You have lit up, man, and I'm so excited to see how excited you get about it. How does it feel looking at Alejandro here, knowing he's one of your proteges? He's one of the people that has gone through the program.
It's gives me a lot of encouragement, and it gets me excited. I remember him as a 15, 16-year-old sophomore. I remember that conversation we had in the library. And right, to see kind of his journey. I mean, Alejandro will also hope to run my campaign for city council a couple years ago. I mean, he has been just a part of each journey, and I have seen his growth, and it's remarkable. I mean, I seen him on stage with President Barack Obama, and right, to be able to hold his own and ask questions. So all this is coming from a kid who didn't really see, well, at least what we not just me, right, but we saw in him. It gives me the fire to keep fighting the fight.
Yeah.
To serve another 11,300 young brothers like we have served so far.
You just answered the question for me. Did you say 11,000?
11,300, yes.
What an amazing number.
We'll serve another like 6,000 this year.
And that's coming across 8 different markets, so to speak?
6 states, 8 regions.
Amazing. Just amazing that it's grown out of Sacramento to blossom into so many different areas. And that's just the beginning.
Just to begin. Great.
And we're going to get there in a second, too, because I'm excited about it. I don't want to pass up the opportunity for you to explain the 4 pillars, because I think it's important for people to understand, it's a disciplined program, but no, it's a disciplined program, and there's a process, and you have to follow the process. Tell us a little bit about that.
There's a big portion of like leadership development. Like that's the pillar, to be able to help to make sure that we're both providing the exposure and the tools to become leaders. Another one is like college access and advising. Mm-hmm. We are a college access and advising program. So that's critical to make sure that if your path is a 4-year, if your path is a 2-year, if your path is like a CT pathway, career college, we're going to help to make sure that you have the pathway to be able to get there. Another one, big one, is mentorship. It's the ability to have another adult or young adult care about you outside of your family, hold you accountable like for your own goals, but also provide the tools like an exposure. Then the other fourth one's around parents, parent engagement. Make sure the family's engaged. Lots of our families, parents did not have good experiences in school. Once their children go to school, they have the same like perception of what it is. So we have to be able to bring parents along in the process to ensure that they can have all the tools to advocate for their child.
Would I be incorrect in assuming that sometimes that may be the hardest part of it, is getting the parental engagement?
Yes, you're correct. I'll take it back. Out of all the process, like leadership pillars, maybe, but it's not difficult once the parent is presented to it the right way. I mean, for example, I was in Marin City, in like May. We were doing our graduation celebration. Marin City, and if you all don't know, like it's in Marin County, but it's 1,200 apartments. Average income is $12,000, almost 100% Black in Marin City. 100% of the parents were at the graduation celebration.
That's incredible.
100%. So it's not that parents don't want to be involved in the process, but they have to, at some point they have to be invited in, but also invited in a way where it's culturally affirming.
Right. I think you just answered the question right there. And I could see Alejandro's head shaking the whole time. Yes. I know you want something to say, so yeah, share that.
No, totally. I'll say that they get you in with pizza and like games. That's how they got me. And then next thing you know, you're doing study halls, and then before you know it, like they put you in front of a group of people and ask you like, oh, okay, like can you share your story? And so I find it funny when he mentions a lot of like leadership opportunities, because for me that was the starting point of me taking up ownerships of my own life, and then taking up these opportunities with a really positive tone, right? So I remember the first time they had me there was like a little award show, because they always celebrated people that increased their GPA, regardless of how much the increase was. As long as you increased it, you were celebrated. And so I go up, I'm like really nervous, I'm fidgeting, right? It was my first time ever like speaking in public. And then, a few years later, from those experiences and like multiple opportunities to speak in front of people, I was able to be prepared and trained. So when, I had the Obama conference, I was able to stand my own. But that only came from really IYT introducing me and putting me in front of people. But I think one of the most beautiful parts about IYT is the parent engagement, right? Like, again, going back to the story about my parents, it's not so much that they didn't know, they didn't really care about my academic achievement, because it's the opposite. They always told me, do your homework as soon as I came back from work, right? But the thing was, they just didn't have a way that they were like culturally welcome in like, I guess, like the parental advisory roles. And so I look at them from where they started, where like they were really apprehensive from even attending any meetings, to now where like they're advocating for my nephews. They're going to meetings, they're going to they're meeting with the counselors, asking for specific classes, right? And I think the most beautiful part was when I graduated from UC Davis, it was like 103, 114 degree weather. My graduation got canceled, like mid-stage, right? And then the very next day, IYT held like a graduation ceremony for college grads. And my parents were elated. My whole family was there. And it was like the most beautiful moment. And something that, even though my college felt giving, IYT was still there to provide that for my family, where they felt okay and comfortable of being there. And, for my parents, they're monolingual. And so there's even a language barrier that a lot of schools don't take into consideration. Language access is very invisible. And so IYT makes it a point to be bilingual and, being able to like have language access with parental outreach.
And Michael, you said something that struck me really, really relevantly. They don't get asked. They don't get invited. The assumption is it's not going to happen. You start asking, and one parent sees another parent whose child is doing better. Well, I want that for my child. Everybody wants the best for their children. Well, I want that, and it just snowballs. To hear that you had 100% is amazing. That's amazing. And what a sense of pride. Talk about breaking a generational cycle. There it is right there. That's the first step in the right direction. One of the things we talk about with all of our executive directors, CEOs, leadership for the organizations is collaboration. Who do you find that you tend to collaborate most with, let's say in the nonprofit world, the ecosystem of nonprofits? I know it's a lot. And you're a Sierra Health Fellow as well, right?
Correct.
So there's one of the steps already, when Chet Hewitt and Sierra Health, I mean, the entire foundation, that's a huge alignment.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have a lot of strong partners within Sacramento. Sierra Foundation is like one of our strongest partners and largest funders, but outside of funding, I mean, it's technical assistance, it's the relationship aspect. Chet is a personal mentor, so a bit like when I'm having a challenge, I'm gonna call and Chet and say, hey man, like here's what I'm experiencing here, like what should I do? So like that's a big part of it. Our school partners are like really big for us. I mean, we can't do the work. You know, we're not like the model is like based on a school campus. So our school partners and our principals and our district partners are really important for us to be able to execute like the work. And then, you know, I think about some of our funders like Arada Brothers Trust and others who have invested a significant amount of IYT over the course of time to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place, we have the services in place to be able to execute. And I know we were talking one about like Frank Washington. I know Frank's not going to want to hear his name mentioned, but Frank is a chair like of our capital campaign, up into fundraise like right when we started, when we'd never done a capital campaign before. Yeah. So I think we have some folks like that who are just really bought in like to the work and want to do whatever we can to help to unlock more stories like Alejandro's.
Well, and you have some incredible advisors on that advisory board. I don't want to name them all because I'm going to forget somebody and then it's going to be rough. But to your point, Frank is amazing. He's absolutely amazing. We'll be back right after we hear from the people making this program possible.
Hello, this is Scott Thomas with Cap Trust in our Sacramento office. I specialize in working with local nonprofits and associations. Annually, we survey private and public nonprofit organizations across the country to better understand challenges they see in today's environment. In our more recent survey, we heard concerns about proper board governance, mission-aligned investment, and how to implement alternative investments. If you would like a copy of the survey or to discuss your organization, look me up, Scott Thomas at captrust.com.
At Western Health Advantage, healthcare isn't just a service. It's a shared value. As a nonprofit leader, you need a health plan that understands the importance of mission-driven work. Western Health Advantage is a local, not-for-profit health plan that supports organizations like yours with affordable, flexible coverage options for your team. But what truly sets them apart is their commitment to community, supporting nonprofits like the American Heart Association, Sacramento Ballet, and the Crocker Art Museum's Pay What You Wish Sundays. With access to top-tier providers and dedicated local support, Western Health Advantage is more than a health plan. It's a partner in your purpose. Explore your options today at westernhealth.com. Western Health Advantage, healthcare with heart, designed for those who give back. Funding. How is the organization funded? You know, where does the money come from? You mentioned Arada Brothers as one of them, of course, but what about in the grand scheme of things? What does it look like?
Yeah, so most of our funding comes from program service income, so earned income. And we charge school districts a price per student to be able to implement the program. The other large component was and still kind of is AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps, you know, was a large funder all the way until like recently.
Yes.
Then it's a combination of sponsorships. It's corporations, it's individuals commit over like a giving plan.
How do you work around that AmeriCorps change, of which so many organizations I speak with are? And to all of your credit, nobody has come in here with their head down and said, we're done. Nobody. We'll figure it out. We got it. We've got this. It wasn't everything. In the majority of cases, it wasn't even half. And I applaud that because the programs you're responsible for are so valuable that the commitment is so great. No, we got this. We'll figure it out. So how about yourself?
Well, I'll also just recognize that like nonprofits are tough like business models. Like your client receives the service like for free, whereas like your customer who's not the client also, most businesses, your customer and your client are the same. Like for nonprofit is enough. So for like AmeriCorps helped to provide a large subsidy, helped to provide some of the people power that we needed, some of the college access mentors like Alejandro was talking about to be able to do the work. They took away that funding. And we weren't the only. There was 1,100 programs across the country that got their funding cut. Because of nothing they did, nothing that we did. It's who we serve, and who we choose, and the values that we chose to stand on. So how it's going, I mean, we're still navigating it. We lost nearly $5 million this fiscal year, and so we're still navigating. We had to do some operational expenditure like any business. We have a reduction of expenses. We changed some of our staffing structures to be able to do, but we're still serving. We actually increased some of young men that we're serving. We're serving like in more schools, and we're going to do a better job. But we're having to do a better job like with less.
Yes,
but we have a phenomenal team. And some phenomenal parents and brothers and partners. We're gonna continue to figure it out.
Knowing that you have that fee for service from the schools really helps.
It does.
Because that's where a lot of people can get stuck. Forget the AmeriCorps, just the funding cuts in general for nonprofits. There, I do see a difference where some people come in because they don't have a fee for service. They don't have anything underneath their grant money, and they are concerned. They've got to learn a whole new model quickly, or they will be in trouble. What's the budget you work with typically in a year? Or
about
has
$18
been?
million this year.
Okay, significant budget.
Yes.
Significant budget. Congratulations. That's
Thank
only
you.
in what, 13, 14 years?
12 years since
In 12?
April 6, 2013. And,
Okay.
During COVID, we like doubled and tripled.
That
So
is, if you were Business Journal's fastest growing, you would definitely be
exactly.
one of the fastest growing. That's
exactly.
a huge number. Congratulations.
And we're the largest organization in the country who have a college access focus for young men of color. Like, there's nobody bigger. In fact, we're the only national college access program that just focuses on young men of color.
Oh, I'm thrilled to hear you say that too, because this program, obviously it's agnostic. You can get it anywhere. That gives it the opportunity to play into Wisconsin or into Minneapolis.
Exactly.
Or now they can share it with any of these other markets. Say, here's what I'm telling you about.
Yeah.
You got to hear this guy. You got to hear what the story's about. You got to hear an example like Alejandro. Awesome. All right, this is a fun question, and I have some ideas, but I can't infuse them because it's your answer. If money were no object, and somebody said, here, Michael, we need to make this thing different. If you give me the right answer, I'm giving you a blank check. What would it look like? What would the organization look like?
Besides scale? Or
Maybe.
in addition to scale.
And I know you've got something going on here, a massive capital project.
If I had a blank check, I would want to be able to provide a guaranteed income for our college students, to be able to help them to be able to focus on, like, provide a strong incentives for completion, have them treat college like their career, so they can be able to have a better chance of completing college. And I would want to make our team, right, like the highest paid and performing team in the country.
And for the students that go through the program, you graduate 98, 99% of your high school students. Consider it everybody.
99.6%.
They all make it.
Yeah.
They all get out. Now, I'm sure that once they scatter and get to their college, it's a little harder to track. But how are you doing, relatively speaking, with those that you do know about?
I think for us, we're doing a phenomenal job of high school graduation. I would argue best in the country. We're doing a really good job getting them to college. About 80% attend college. We're doing an okay job of them graduating. If you enter a university, like with IYT, within 6 years, about 60% of our guys graduate. It's higher than a national average, but it's nothing where I'm going to hang my hat on and be really proud of, because that means we're losing 40%. 40% who start off at a university aren't graduating. So for IYT, that's our next hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
The first hurdle was making sure they graduate high school. We have that done. Getting into college, a far majority who want to go to college, we're able to get there. The next step is, how do we do a much better job in supporting them through college?
And some of that might be what you just talked about, that guaranteed income, because they're working so much just to get themselves through school. School suffers sometimes. And they say, well, I'm making some money. I'm making okay money. And they just can't complete.
And I would couple that with an internship. This summer, we had probably about 50 or so of our college students interning around. I see a dramatic difference after an internship, where they have done something professionally for 8 weeks, 25, 35 hours. And then when they leave that internship, their future and then college makes a whole lot more sense. They're not just going there just because. They're going there for a reason now.
Yeah, they get it. They know what it looks like.
Exactly.
They felt it. They say, okay, I really liked, or I really didn't like. I want to do something else. Alejandro, what led you down the path that you took to go to UC Davis?
It really just happened through opportunities. So IYT was the biggest opportunity. And, when I graduated from UC Davis, that was, I could look back in my life and look at all the different dots connect. And it all started with IYT. So I would not have gone to university if it wasn't that. But I think other opportunities that IYT gave me, like internships. My very first internship was as a junior in high school interning at a lobbying firm at the Capitol. I remember I had to ask my mentor like how to tie a tie. It was literally my first time doing any professional work. And so, I got out from class, I would take the light rail into the Capitol and I would do my internship. And, it was just a desk job. I was organizing opposition letters, 4 letters going into the Capitol to give comment alongside the lobbyists that I was shadowing. And I think for me, like just seeing a professional job for the first time and like being immersed in it really completely changed my outlook in life. And you couple that with me being infatuated with Stanford and like the college life and the college students and just how different it is from back home, it really did just open up my eyes to university. And so I hankered down, I started studying, doing my homework. And then eventually, I went from being the 297th rank out of 330, 340 to like the 27th or 29th. Basically, I climbed all the way up to the rankings. We had a lot of prep around those college essays, like how to tell your story. Because at least for me, I look around and they all have similar stories for me. I didn't realize just how unique and special my story was until I started to learn and go through these workshops around how different it is that other people grew up with. And so had I not gone through that, I would have thought everybody had the exact same lifestyle. And had I not gone through those workshops, I would have written a completely different essay because I didn't value my life experience because I didn't think it was unique. And so when I did get into university, I completely flourished. I love studying. I discovered politics. Michael introduced me to political campaigns when he was running for City Hall. And he basically he was like, hey, do you want to be my field director? I was like, yeah, of course. What does that mean? And that's pretty common in IYT where they just like throw you in the water. But I think that's the best way to learn. And IYT is a safe space where you could fail.
Yeah.
And, with his race, that really made me fall in love with political campaigns. And a few years later, I started my own political firm. And we had 10 campaigns and, we were extremely successful. Now we're going into the next cycle, with a really high level of confidence in a political sphere that I look around at my political operatives and my colleagues in the field, and they by no means look like me. And so we're entering spaces where traditionally young men of color have not been in. And it only started because I was given opportunities early on and I was invested in. And again, I was very much not that kid that people gave a second look to until IYT came into my life.
He's been on a lot more successful campaigns now.
Yeah, I bet, right? Because you're still sitting here talking to me. But what you're doing is, I think, far greater, and you have much more scope than you would have just at city council.
I'm in my purpose, definitely.
Yeah, and you still have plenty of time. So let me ask you, I don't want to get completely off the funding thing because you've got the College Success Center. Tell us about that. I mean, there's a capital campaign out there. You're $3 out of $4 million close to it. Yeah. And I think people kind of want to hear, what is this thing? And maybe that may not be the full blank check, but maybe there's somebody out here who's going to say that, yeah, I need to give something to that.
Like the reason behind it was for years. We have our young brothers have always asked us, hey, listen, when IYT can't program in the evenings, like we're on the weekends, or we're having trouble getting access to our classroom, like during the summer, where do we go? Sacramento and Sacramento County region does not have a dearth of like youth development spaces. There's not a robust community aspect where like young people, especially young men of color, have a safe space, right, to be able to go. So, like, the vision behind it was to create something where on those evenings, on the weekend, on the evenings during the weekday, or on the weekend, or during the summer, they have a place to go where they are welcome, where they're loved. They be able to they get a chance to eat, they get a chance to be able to bond and build one another, and they get a chance to be able, right, to learn. So the College Success Center was built with that in mind. So we bought a building in November of 2022. And we've been in this process for the past couple of years to raise $4 million to renovate the bottom of our current building to create a dynamic, like innovative engaging space, like for young men of color, to be able to see themselves in a space, but also be able to learn and grow, like, and develop.
And this truly is a college success center. This is where you go, and it has rooms for media of sorts.
Yeah.
All your technology is there. There's meeting rooms. There's huddle rooms. There's, I would imagine, presentation rooms. The schematic is there on the website. I'll let you give that in just a bit when we wrap up. But I think it's such a unique concept and a way to do it with easy access for where it is in the confluence of freeways that you got to get there.
Correct.
You're 75% of the way there. So it's just a matter of a little bit more to push it over the edge, which is really amazing.
Only $1 million. Yes. So if any of your listeners have $1 million you want to be able to do, y'all, feel free. We would love it to be able to put your name on the building too.
That's right. And that building does have some visibility.
It does, high visibility. It's right off of Highway 160. I mean, it's easy it's a 5-minute walk from a light rail station. It's a high transit right there in El Paso. It's a high trafficked corner, like, of our community, to be able, highly visible.
You forgot the one part that makes it most visible. It's just down the street from Costco.
There we go. Just down the street from Costco.
It's right to Costco, right?
You see Costco from our building.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's go now the other side of it, from the big vision down to greatest need. What is the greatest need as you see it today?
Yeah, the greatest need is to be able to raise money, like, for our college access mentors. Like with the AmeriCorps, like, we lost a tremendous amount. We lost millions of dollars overnight, right, because of a decision, like, in the administration. So for us, is to be able to provide robust mentoring, the same that helped Alejandro become the successful young man that he is today. We have to raise money for college access mentors. We have to raise money for college shores. We have to raise money to make sure, right, that our young men can eat after school. We have to ensure that all of that is packaged in a way where, like, our team is taken care of, but also the young person and their families are supported.
Mm-hmm. And that's what those AmeriCorps mentors did, because they were funded by the program. Once those go away, you have to replace them with fee-based. You have to pay them.
Exactly.
There's a salary.
Exactly. So AmeriCorps members are still employees of IYT. Like, they were still paid, like, through IYT payroll, but they were partially subsidized, like, through a grant. So a grant from AmeriCorps provided a portion of their salary. It's only a portion. It was never all. It was a portion of it. And now that has gone away, we no longer have that subsidy, like, to support our college access mentors here in California.
Do you have the ability for volunteers to step in and support, or are they just too short-term, not as much commitment?
Yeah, some, like, we're thinking about how do we create more of, like, an industry mentor model, in particular for our college students. We're still early on in, like, the design phase around that, but our middle school and high school structure aren't built to be able to have, like, volunteers. It's not like a Big Brothers, Big Sisters, because it requires a significant time commitment too.
That's what I thought might be the difference.
It's during the school day. So the program happens during the school day. These are pull-out sessions. The mentor sessions are pull-out sessions. So we're going to pull you out of PE. You're going to come. You're going to talk with me for 20, 30 minutes. So we're going to go through wellness. We're going to go through your grades. We're going to talk about family. We're going to talk about things you kind of care about. And those sessions happen consistently all throughout the school year.
You just mentioned something. I do want you to be able to address it, because we actually did something on the Impact Fund at the SEC Region Community Foundation. I screw that up so many times, right? And get them backwards or screw them up.
And Linda used to always correct me when I used to say regional.
Right. Wellness is one of those pieces. And make no mistake, if you are not healthy, you cannot study well. So just go a little bit on that, because that is a part of the program. You want people to understand your health is everything, because if you aren't taking care of yourself, you can't be taking care of anybody else, because you're not going to get where you need to be.
Yeah. We think about, like, just 8 dimensions of wellness. And I would argue that 94% of adults, right, don't know what the 8 dimensions of, but these are important, like, to your well-being and sort of how you show up. So for us, a part of what we do is we teach our young men, like, the language, like, what the 8 dimensions of wellness is. How does it play into how you show up in school? And a big part of wellness is housing. A big part of wellness is what you put into your body, like what you consume, whether you're positively consuming food or you're negatively, right, consuming substances. So for us, that's all part of the education to make sure that they're making good choices that inform their wellness. And a big part, and especially a growing part, like post-COVID, is, like, their mental health. So it's assigning language when they're feeling, right, depressed or anxious, or they're having other symptoms. And for us, like, our college access mentors aren't therapists, right? So we triage them. So schools always have a tremendous amount of resources so for us, it's a partnership with the school to say, hey, listen, right, this young person having a really tough issue. Here are some of the things that we talked about. Can you talk to him tomorrow about these. And then even triaging we have therapist partners, like who we have worked with in the community to be able to provide like referral for a family and the young person, when they're experiencing some challenging mental health moments.
Mm-hmm. I think that is the most often overlooked element of the big picture. You said mental health, which is one of the biggest parts of it, because it's easy to dismiss. We try to dismiss it. It's not as accepted, much more today than it was even 5-10 years ago, but still a long way to go. And especially when you have people with so many situational elements that impact their day-to-day lives. When you're worried about where you're going to live, when you're worried about what you're going to eat, forget healthy. I'm not worried about eating healthy. I'm worried about eating. And I'm not worrying about where I'm going to live. I'm worried about, will it be, a wall or a door, that I slam and sleep in the backseat of a car? It's just all these things.
All these challenges. And I will never forget having a conversation with one of our young men. And we had asked this question around, we were having a discussion, like, what's the most common sound you hear at night?
Oh, boy.
And for him, it was sirens.
Mm-hmm.
Sirens and bullets.
Yep.
And that's the sound that you hear. That's the most common sound you hear. Like, he lived on Mack Road and Center Parkway. So you think about all that. How do you show up to school? You're not able to sleep.
Right.
Because you're being interrupted by all these different. So it's much more than just this young person showing up to school ready and prepared to learn.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not ready and prepared to learn mentally, if some of their trauma and the other issues aren't taken care of, it's impossible to understand algebra.
Yep.
Not impossible. People do it all the time. Almost makes it a lot more difficult.
Much harder, right?
To be able to do. Rather, if you provide some of these support structures in place and this network of folks who have to exist around a young person, to be able to make sure that they're okay to show up and to be their best selves in school.
Yeah. We're going to take a real hard right turn here on this one, and we're just about wrapping up. What does Michael Lynch do in his downtime? How do you leave some of it behind?
I've seen his schedule. I don't know if he has a lot of downtime.
Well, I can see it. He's the first person I've gone to. It doesn't go to his email. It doesn't go to an admin email. It goes to calendar. Info at calendar at IYT. And I'm like, calendar?
What do I do? Right. So I've been married 12 years. My wife is a corporate attorney. So her schedule is kind of crazy now too. And I got 2 kids, 9 and 6.
Oh, you got your hands full.
So, my free time is spent playing soccer with my son. My son loves soccer. He thinks Lionel Messi is right next to Jordan. It just, So I spend my time when I get home.
He's not alone with that thought either, right?
Playing soccer with him, spending time with my daughter, doing whatever she wants to do for the day. But I love to work out. I love to read. And, that's kind of my getaway.
Yeah.
I'm reading this crazy book right now by Percival Everett called Trees. So I've been stuck in this book for the past week. Every time when I get home, my kids ask me to do something, I'm reading. You get lost in the world. So I do that. And the travel. When we're able to do it. We just came from Bodega Bay this weekend with some friends. We're going to Hawaii here in a couple weeks. My wife is a finalist on the Scrabble game show.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, so she just got the call 2 days ago. So she's going to film in London. So I'm I'm coming with you.
She's going to London for the filming?
She's going to London for the Scrabble game show.
How cool is that?
Wow.
She may, and she's we've been playing, Jeff, we've been together 17 years. We've been playing for 17 years. She had been beating me for 17 years consistently, and I leave frustrated every time. Probably 90% of the time she beats me. And we were watching TV 6 months ago and saw the Scrabble game show. I was like, Dre, you should apply. She applied, went through this process, and now we're going to London in a couple of weeks.
You're going to get a ton of Scrabble things in email now that you've said that, because everybody knows. But you can't feel bad about losing. You're competing against a world-class player.
Well, I think, it makes me feel a whole lot better now.
Yeah, I would
Out
agree.
of all the times I have lost to her. But yeah, I'm excited for it. So that's what I do for fun.
That's
play
great.
games with my wife, spend time with the kids, and I like to read and work out.
How does somebody learn more about Improve Your Tomorrow?
It's really simple. improveyourtomorrow.org. Go to the website, check us out. If you're interested and you want to get involved, tell folks to be able to go to the contact page, fill in a comment, and to be able to send it over, and we'll make sure.
Or if you want to send them a $1 million check.
If anybody has a $1 million check, y'all just let us know. We'd love it. We are great stewards of your resources.
Michael, Alejandro, I can't thank each of you enough for sharing the incredible story of IYT. You are a testament to the success of it. Your enthusiasm for it gets me excited. The changes that education brings to the communities, to families, and the confidence it inspires in people like yourself, Alejandro, the individual, the young men of color who go through the program, that is second to none. And I, too, am a big believer in education as breaking that cycle of poverty, that generational cycle of poverty. Keeping these guys engaged for 12-plus years. And Alejandro and I were speaking before when you had gotten here, and he said, I'm going to be involved forever.
Lifelong.
That's a tremendous compliment to everybody. Congratulations to you, to the team, who's got to be working a whole lot harder today than they were just 6 months ago. And I'm going to see if I can get this out right. Lead with love in all that you do. If that's not us, right, then who?
There you go, Jeff. Well said.
Yeah?
Well said.
I got it right?
You got it right.
Good.
You got it right.
Good. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. We hope today's episode inspired you and gave you a deeper look into the work of our local nonprofits. If you believe in our mission to amplify their voices, please take a moment to leave us a positive review and share this episode with a friend. It helps more people discover the incredible work happening in our community. Don't miss future episodes. Subscribe to our weekly updates and monthly newsletter at nonprofpod.com. And if you're part of a nonprofit that would like to be featured, we'd love to hear from you. Just visit the guest tab on our website. The Nonprofit Podcast Network is recorded and produced at Hear Me Now Studio with generous support from our founding partners, CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations serving Sacramento, Roseville, and Folsom, and online at captrust.com. And Western Health Advantage, local care, community impact. Find the plan that fits at westernhealth.com.